Giants versus Lions. It's the fourth quarter with 12 minutes and 15 seconds left, and the Giants have the ball. They come out in 12 personnel, one running back and two tight ends, and they're about to call what I think is their best play of the year, certainly their most interesting play. They line up in this pistol formation where their quarterback, Jameis Winston, is not directly under center. He's also not as far back as he would be in a typical shotgun formation. He's somewhere in between, about 4 yards behind his center, with his running back behind him. The heavy formation, meaning either an extra tight end or an extra running back, is a hint that they're more likely to run the ball. They snap the ball, and the offensive line takes a lateral step to the left, every single one of them, and begins doing a zone run blocking technique. Winston steps back, turns around, and appears to hand the ball off to the running back, but it's actually a fake. It's a play action, and this running back steps up to make a block himself. Winston continues and bootlegs out to the left, and we're now in the middle of a pretty standard and effective play action bootleg play. However, it's actually a trick play. The Z receiver, Gunnar Olszewski, is running across the field behind Winston, and Winston tosses him the ball. So he's now running the opposite side of where the handoff happened and from the direction that the offensive line is blocking. And he's also got this tight end who's motioning across the field himself, or pulling across the field rather, and acting now as a lead blocker. But as he gets to the center of the field, he stops, steps into the pocket, and we realize that he's actually throwing the ball himself. This is a trick play. It's a passing play. Our wide receiver, our tight end here, is running a deep crosser, and our X receiver is running this kind of pivot route out here. But most surprising of all is Jameis Winston continues running and wheeling out the outside here, who is ultimately who Gunnar decides to throw the ball to. Winston has some space behind this cornerback, who is probably pretty surprised who he's blocking. And Gunnar makes a pretty bad throw. He underthrows. Winston has to turn around, actually move toward the ball, make a play on it, makes a good catch, has contact with the defender, breaks a tackle, and then runs upfield for a touchdown. What's great about this play is the multiple layers of deception. You've got the play action run combined with the zone blocking technique from the offensive line. That really sells this idea of run, combined with this fake reverse going the other way. That alone is a pretty good and interesting play call. But then for that to actually be a trick play, a pass play, and for the intended receiver to be the quarterback, totally unexpected, really exciting to watch. And it ended in a pretty big touchdown as well. Giants versus Lions. The second play we're going to look at is from the very same game, but this time we're in overtime, and the Lions have the ball. The game is tied at 27 apiece, and what we're about to look at is an incredible run from Jahmyr Gibbs, a 69-yard touchdown on their first possession in overtime, giving the Lions the lead for the first time in the entire game, and ultimately giving them the win, as the Giants were unable to convert on the next possession in overtime to tie it back up. In my opinion, this play is not only a great example of Gibbs having good vision and speed, but it's more about the blocking. It's an incredible example of run blocking, both the way that the play was designed, but also the execution from the players. Every one of the Lions blockers wins his assignment, which is why Gibbs runs for this 69-yard touchdown without even being touched by a Giants defender. It's really impressive. So here's what happened. The Lions come out in 11 personnel, one running back, one tight end. This is the most commonly used personnel package in the NFL. It's the first play of the drive. We're 69 yards away from the end zone. It's 1st and 10. There's a much higher likelihood of this being a run play for that simple fact. But also, the Lions choose to come out in this ace formation, which means the quarterback Goff is lined up under center, directly behind the center, and Gibbs is 7 yards directly behind him. Ace meaning there's only one running back in the backfield. Now, the defense here is playing an over front. This means that the defense has chosen to line up in a specific way in front of the offensive line. Now, let's pause and look at a quick mini lesson here on defensive line techniques because, first of all, it's really interesting, but it's also relevant for understanding what makes this play so great. So on the previous play, wherever the ball carrier is tackled, let's say he's tackled here. On the next play, that's where the ball will be placed. The center will line up right on that ball, the guards next to him, and the tackles next to them. So the offensive line doesn't have a choice of where they line up. It's fixed. There is some flexibility with regards to how closely they line up next to each other, but only a little bit. So their position is fixed, which means that the defensive line gets to choose where in front of the offensive line they want to line up. So this is an advantage for them because they can create all sorts of strategies based on the different combinations of where they line up. The position in which the defensive linemen line up is called a technique. Directly in front of the center is a 0 technique. Right off the shoulder, either one of his shoulders, is a 1 technique. On the inside shoulder of either guard is a 2I. Right in front of him is a 2. Right off his outside shoulder is a 3. And then it goes 4I, 4, 5, 7, 6, 9. I'm not entirely certain where these numbers originated and why you've got some weird things like going from 7 to 6 and then to 9 with no 8, and why you've got the 2I and the 4I. But this is pretty standard terminology, and this is what the defense uses to understand where they should be lining up. Okay, so let's get back to the play. On this play, the Giants have chosen to line up in what's called an over front. So the offense, they have the tight end on the right side of the field here. So this is the strength of their formation from the defense's perspective. So in an over front, you've got one defensive lineman who's lined up in the strong side B gap. So in this case, the right side of the field, the right B gap. This is the A, B, C, and then a D gap would be out here if you had, another player lined up here. And then same on the other side, you've got the A, B, C, and D gap. So in this over front, you've got a defensive lineman lined up on the strong B gap, and then another defensive lineman lined up in the weak A gap. This combination, if you've got these two players in this configuration, this is an over front. You also typically have two defensive ends who, in this case, they're lined up in the 5 technique. This is pretty common against run protection. They could be lined up a little bit further outside as well. Sometimes you'll see them line up in this 9 technique, but this gives them really good outside leverage, which is good against for pass rushing against a pass play. But because we're on 1st and 10, the first play of the drive, higher likelihood of this being a run, you'll typically see 5 tech more likely than a 9 tech. So this is an over front. In this over front, there are 2 key defenders that need to win their battles for the defense to stop the run quickly. It's the 3 tech defensive lineman and the Mike linebacker. The 3 tech, who's got leverage in this B gap over this right tackle simply because of where he's lined up, is almost guaranteed to be combo blocked by the right guard and the right tackle, or the right guard and the center. This means that both of these linemen are going to engage in a block with him initially. If either one of them gets really good control over him, the other one will peel off and climb to the second level and block a linebacker. And so the 3 tech's job in this run scenario is to hold his ground and eat this double team. In other words, he wants both of these offensive linemen to be engaged in the block for as long as possible. Otherwise, if one of the blockers is able to peel off and climb to the second layer, he's going to block this Mike linebacker, which is a problem. Why? Because the Mike is the engine of this overfront. His job is to move horizontally to the left, to the right, depending on where the run is going, and jump into the open gap where the running back is running towards. His primary responsibility usually is in the strong side A gap in this case. This is his run fit. And what the defense usually does is they try and have somebody responsible for every one of these running gaps. So typically this 2I would be responsible for this weak side A gap. Our 3 tech is going to be responsible for the strong side B gap. This 5 tech over here, responsible for the C gap. This defensive end on the weak side, responsible for this C gap. So our will linebacker here is responsible for the weak side B gap. And then we've got a strong safety over here. It's actually a free safety, but typically this is the strong safety. He'll have this kind of force responsibility on the outside, or the D gap. So all of these running lanes, in theory, have somebody covering them. So if the 3 tech does his job and forces both of these offensive linemen to continue blocking him, the Mike is going to be able to do what's called scrape clean, which means he's going to be able to read the play and quickly move over top and fill that running lane without being blocked. This is going to allow him to get to the runner more quickly and make a tackle for hopefully a 0-yard gain. If that's not the case, and one of these linemen gets good control, the other one climbs to the Mike and makes a block, this running back might not be contacted until 2 or more yards after the line of scrimmage, which is already a positive gain for the offense, and it increases the risk of broken tackles and bigger gains. I briefly mentioned that this free safety, who is usually the strong safety, has this force responsibility. So he's trying to keep the run on the inside. He's the bounce killer. He's preventing the running back from bouncing the run to the outside. So what that means is that the running back might have a primary gap that he's targeting. Let's say it's the B gap. If this is closed off because the 3 tech is doing a good job, he might look inwards to either one of the A gaps or maybe even further on the backside to see if those could be open for a running lane to cut back into. If not, he's going to look to the other side and maybe bounce to the outside to the C or the D gap. So it's this strong safety's job to prevent that from happening. He's trying to contain him and keep everything on the inside where there's more help to make a tackle. That's his force responsibility, but he also has a fit responsibility where if this C gap, for example, is unblocked and the runner comes through there, then he's responsible for making that tackle. Okay, so knowing that, here's the defense's plan in this particular case. The Giants actually call what's called a slant, which what that means is the defensive tackles, they actually cross the face of the offensive lineman in front of them and attack a different running lane than they typically would. So in this case, this 3 tech is actually attacking this A gap, this 2I, instead of attacking the weak side A gap, is attacking the weak side B gap. Our weak side defensive end is still attacking this C gap. And the 5 tech on the strong side, instead of going for the outside C gap, he's actually crossing and trying to go into this B gap, which would normally be the 3 tech's responsibility. The purpose of this slant is to make it more difficult for the offensive line to get their hands set on the defensive lineman. It can mess up combo blocks, and it can also disrupt zone blocking timing. So it's just a tactic. Now, if we look here, there's a couple open running lanes. We've got this weak side A gap and the strong side C gap. So these are now the responsibility of our Mike, depending on which side the run goes to. And it looks as if every running gap is accounted for. So here's what happens next. The tight end starts to motion, and he lines up right next to the tackle here. And this starts to create a conflict for this 5 tech defender. But then the offense does a second motion with the Z receiver. He comes inward as well and lines up here, and the ball is snapped. These 2 late motions are part of the brilliance of this play call and are what create a lot of conflict for the defense. What happens is our weak side 5 tech is blocked by the left tackle. Our weak side defensive tackle who's going through the B gap is picked up by the left guard, no problem. The ball is handed off, and it's a running play toward the right side. Our 3 tech crosses the face and comes toward this strong side A gap, and he's combo blocked by the right guard and the center. And they both actually do a really good job of getting him under control quickly. And the center is actually able to peel off and climb to the second level and block this will. So that's a win for the offense. The 5 tech defensive end on the strong side is expecting to go cross the face of this right tackle and hopefully just engage with him and plug up this strong side B gap. However, what he is expecting is that he's going to be engaged in a combo block with this 3 tech, because typically that's what happens most of the time because he's lined up in this B gap. So he actually takes a step left toward that 3 tech, sticks out his arm as if he's going to start engaging him in a block, then realizes that, oh, that's actually the center's responsibility because he's going into the A gap, looks downfield, climbs, and engages in a block with the Mike, which is a big problem for the defense. So he actually does this untouched. He does that before the 5 tech even is able to engage with him at all. Remember, the tight end has motioned over right next to that right tackle. And so he's able to engage with that 5 tech as he's coming through that B gap and down blocks him pretty aggressively, gets really good control over him, and is pushing him to the left side of the field with ease. Now, this is where Gibbs shines, because it appears as if his original running target is this B gap. But he's got a slight moment of hesitation where he's allowing his blocks to develop, and he's reading those blocks to figure out where he should make a cut. He quickly sees this tight end down blocking the 5 tech, and he bounces out and aims for this C gap instead. An inexperienced running back might have just locked in on that B gap and forced himself in there. So he would have maybe just tried to kind of sneak around this 5 tech as he's being pushed across the field. He would have ended up in traffic and probably being tackled for a 0 or 1 yard gain maybe. But this is what makes Gibbs great. His patience and his great vision. So now the defense is in trouble. The Mike in this case is one of the primary guys who needs to quickly read that Gibbs is coming into the C gap and make a move. However, as we've learned, the right tackle climbed to him immediately. In fact, he almost got to him before Gibbs even touched the ball and is already engaged with the block. So he's completely ineffective in this case. He's not scraping clean. The free safety now is the defense's last hope. He was meant to contain and keep Gibbs to the inside, but in this case, he's actually playing his fit role because he's the last defender who's got a shot at tackling him, and the C gap becomes his responsibility. Well, this Z receiver, who has also motioned across the field right before the snap, is keyed in on that free safety. That's his primary read, and he immediately engages in a block. He's taken out of the play as well. So the result of this play is Gibbs reads that block, bounces to the C gap, navigates through, kind of weaves, and then gets to the outside. And once he's in that space, there's nobody there quick enough to catch him. And he goes in untouched for a 69-yard touchdown. So the reason this play was so interesting to me was because of the smart play design, having these two motioned tight end and receiver get in a great position to create conflict for that 5 tech who, originally had a pretty good opportunity to tackle the runner here. The right tackle climbed the second layer, and had that tight end or Z receiver not lined up here, then that 5 tech would have been in perfect position to make a tackle for a loss. But of course, that tight end picking up on that block, down blocking him to the left. The Mike is now already engaged at the second layer, and then the Z has engaged the free safety. It's just a perfect play design, executed perfectly, and then Gibbs makes a great read on the play as well. All around, fantastic play. Jaguars at Cardinals. It's the first quarter. There's 2 minutes and 23 seconds left. The Jaguars have the ball on their own 11-yard line. The offense comes out in 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end, in a shotgun formation with Trevor Lawrence about 5 or 6 yards behind his center, and a trips left formation, 3 receivers on the left. They appear to be using some kind of dagger concept, which involves a go route, an underneath route like this, which looks kind of like a slant in this case, and then also a deep post over the top. So it's these 2 receivers here, this route combination, that's the dagger concept, and then they added in this post route. I think the idea here is to clear the shell coverage. So the defense, they're lined up with a single high safety here, which you could assume would be playing zone coverage in the middle, and then 2 cornerbacks who are each lined up about 8 yards off the line of scrimmage. This is a tell, not a guarantee, but a tell that this could be cover 3. So the shell protection, meaning like the deepest coverage, could look something like this, thirds. So this route combination they've called, this go route will force that cornerback to play his deep responsibility. This post route will force that deep safety to play his responsibility, which could create an opportunity for this underneath route to get open. Now we've got some defenders down here. They're, you could maybe expect if it's zone coverage for there to be some zones underneath like this, in which case this receiver simply just has to find an open gap in between those zones. That is essentially what I'm thinking the purpose of this route concept is. If it ends up being man coverage, then this slant route going horizontally across the field tends to be a pretty high success rate against that type of coverage as well. But the defense has walked up 7 defenders to the line of scrimmage. On top of their defensive linemen, they've got these 2 linebackers who are mugging the A gap, meaning they're right on the line of scrimmage, showing as if they're going to blitz, and they're both in those 2 A gaps. And then also this free safety on the end, showing pressure. So this suggests that a blitz could be coming, but it's not a guarantee. It could be a simulated pressure. So, 3 of these guys could end up dropping, which means the defense is only rushing 4. So that's not actually a true blitz. So they're trying to create some confusion for the offense. They don't know exactly which guys are going to blitz, if any. Before the ball is snapped, the center and the left guard point to the middle linebacker here, identifying him as the Mike and establishing their protection rules. So in doing that, by identifying the one on the right as the Mike, they might be doing a slide protection is what it looks like, which means the 3 linemen on the right side are going to be responsible for blocking in the zone or the gap to their right. They're going to kind of take a lateral step in that direction, and that's their responsibility. The backside blockers on the line are going to down block and be in one-on-one protection against these defensive linemen. That's how that slide protection works and the purpose of identifying this mic. So of course they don't know who's going to blitz, but they're essentially saying that these are the guys that they're going to be responsible for blocking, which leaves 2 remaining guys who are unblocked. So if this running back happens to be in for blocking, he's going to make a read on the inside first. So he's going to look to this linebacker first to make a block, and then he's going to look outside. So if he doesn't end up blocking, he's either going to look to the left or look to the right and see if there's other blockers coming and block them. The tight end might also give a block on the outside here, or he might not. He might have a route that he needs to run. So in doing this, of course, there might be more blitzers than they're capable of blocking, but at least the quarterback knows which guys he needs to keep an eye out for. He doesn't need to look at every single one. He needs to trust that his guys will be blocking their responsibilities. And if either of these 2 guys comes unblocked, he needs to keep an eye out for them and get the ball out quickly. It simplifies his read. And so here's what actually happens. The ball is snapped, and the middle linebacker and the left defensive end drop back into coverage. And the defense is sending 5-man pressure. So they are blitzing and dropping 2 of those 7 into coverage. This is called a fire zone blitz, which means they show 6 or 7 guys on the line of scrimmage who look as if they're going to blitz. And then they do actually blitz one of them, but then they drop at least one of them into coverage. It's to maximize confusion and hopefully force the quarterback to make a quick throw into a dropping defender where he initially appears to the quarterback like there's an empty zone. So for example, he might expect pressure to come and initially see, maybe he picks up the linebacker here is rushing, and he might kind of deduce that, okay, maybe there's a zone here that's open. And initially it might appear to be the case because nobody's lined up there. But then when this linebacker drops into coverage, that quarterback might make a mistake and throw it right into that area and cause a pick. So the defensive end and the middle linebacker drop into these intermediate zone coverages. The defense on the back end does appear to be playing cover 3, and then the nickel's playing this intermediate zone here as well. The 3-tech defensive tackle and our defensive end on the right side are doing what's called a twist. So the 3-tech is blitzing through this B gap, but he kind of like takes a step forward to kind of engage and make contact with this right guard, but then kind of pushes to the outside. So he's kind of being double teamed and makes contact with both the right guard and the right tackle. At the same time as this is happening, this defensive end is twisting or coming right behind him. So the purpose of what the defensive tackle here is doing is trying to create space and force this right guard to attach to him so that there is more space for his defensive end to rush through this hole. That's the purpose of this twist. At the same time, this free safety is also blitzing around the backside. On the offensive line, this left tackle initially is responsible for blocking this defensive end one-on-one. But once he realizes that he is dropping back into coverage, he immediately goes to look for help. And he's looking now to this defensive tackle, engages him in a block, as does the left guard, who that's his primary blocking responsibility. The center originally is looking at this middle linebacker as his primary man to block because he's in his zone to the right. And because of that slide protection, that's his responsibility. And as a matter of fact, he's not even looking to the left at this linebacker here who is blitzing. So the center moves to the right and does end up seeing this defensive end here and makes contact and does make a bit of a block on him. The right guard and the right tackle do get caught up with this 3-tech here, which leaves the 2 blitzers. So we've got the one linebacker here coming through the A gap. This is the running back's first read starting from the inside. He immediately spots that and picks him up correctly. Great read by the running back. And then on the right side, the tight end who is running a route does a chip block initially. So what that means is he just, right after the snap, makes contact, does kind of a short half-second block, but then releases and goes into his route, which is just kind of like a curl route. So the result of all of this is that this free safety, after initially being blocked momentarily, is running around the outside free. And he's running toward the quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence should know this. Due to the mic identification and the slide protection, he needs to know that this guy could be sending pressure and he should at least be feeling this pressure, but he absolutely doesn't. He gets a hand on Trevor as he's looking downfield to make a pass, and the ball comes out, and it's unclear if it's a fumble But regardless, it doesn't hit the ground and it kind of floats over here. And this defensive tackle makes a great play, great heads up play, sees the ball and catches it for an interception and runs it in for a pick six. So when you're watching TV, look out for this situation where there are 6 or 7 defensive players right on the line of scrimmage. It's really easy to spot. And then notice if and which defenders end up dropping back into zone coverage. And then count the guys that are actually rushing. If there's more than 4, that means it's actually a blitz and that the quarterback should feel pressure coming quickly. In this case, this is a really fascinating play. You've got that fire zone blitz with the dropping defenders. You've got this twist in here to try and create space for that left end. And then the free safety coming around the outside. Really good play design, ended up in a pick six. Falcons at Saints. Kirk Cousins is back as starter after Michael Penix got hurt, and he's needing to prove that he deserves a spot as a starter. It's the fourth quarter, 11 minutes and 10 seconds on the clock. The Falcons have the ball, and the ball is on the Saints' 49-yard line. The Falcons come out in 13 personnel, so 1 running back and 3 tight ends, which is a bit unusual. This is not used a lot by many teams at all, so this is already kind of interesting. They're in this tight ace formation, similar to what we saw before, where the quarterback is under center, the running back is lined up about 6 or 7 yards behind him, and he's the only one in the backfield. That's what ace means. Tight means that the receivers are lined up in close proximity to the ball. We don't have anybody who's out on the perimeter. So because there's multiple tight ends on the field, we'd call this a heavy formation. Pretty much anytime there's more than one running back or more than one tight end, you'd call it a heavy formation. They're more capable of blocking. They tend to be larger, stronger than receivers and just more capable for blocking. So that suggests that this is more likely to be a run play. There's no guarantee, but we're in 1st and 10, so it's a pretty run heavy down in distance. The Falcons have Bijan Robinson, who's one of the best running backs in the league, who's having an excellent year. This is a very credible running situation. It's unclear pre-snap what the defense is doing. Both safeties are high in kind of this, what looks like a cover 2 shell, but we also have both of the cornerbacks who are playing pretty deep off the line of scrimmage as well. So it could be a quarters look, meaning they're playing cover 4 situation. Could be kind of a cover 6 where one half of the field is cover 2, the other half is cover 4, or it could end up being some kind of cover 3. It's not entirely clear though, just based on how they line up pre-snap. But here's what happens. The outside tight end, Kyle Pitts, motions inwards and the ball is snapped. It's actually a fake run. It's a play action, fake handoff on the right side. Kirk Cousins drops back and then Bijan rolls out into the flat as a check down option for the pass. Kirk steps back into the pocket, turns around, looks downfield, and play action is Kirk's bread and butter. This is what he likes to do more than almost any other quarterback. You see the Falcons do this a lot. And on the defensive side, what happens is the strong safety rotates down, which just means that right before the ball is snapped, he starts to move toward the line of scrimmage. And it appears the defense is playing a cover 3 buzz. So the free safety starts to move toward the center of the field, and the corners are kind of sitting there slowly backpedaling. So it looks as if they're playing something like this. Cover 3 buzz, with the buzz referring to the safety who is buzzing down and playing this zone responsibility right here. Pitts runs a dig route at about a 16-yard depth. So he actually, when he motions, he's motioning here, and then he goes to about 16 yards and then cuts across the field like this. This is a deep enough depth that it puts him behind these linebackers and gets the attention of this free safety. So he actually pulls the free safety down and forces him to cover this deep dig route. And the vulnerability here is that now we have this deep middle that is open. It's as if we're kind of playing a cover 2, but not really, because these corners are not playing anywhere near the center of the field. And that's exactly the purpose of this play. And it's exactly what Cousins sees as his receiver Moody runs this post route right across the middle. So of course, this cornerback does pick this up, starts to cover him, but the receiver has a bit of inside leverage and speed, and he's also breaking more toward the inside. This cornerback on the other side does attempt to come in to try and make a play, but there's just not enough space. Kirk hits him for a 49-yard touchdown. Caught right on the goal line, falling into the end zone for a touchdown, taking a 2-score lead in the game. really big moment in this game. So this was a really good play design. This 2-route combination, this dig route across the middle, baited that free safety, pulling him down from that deep responsibility. Had it not been for that, touchdown pass would not have happened. And there might have been a completion for, a 20-yard completion to Pitts across the middle, which of course the defense would have much rather have taken. Other than that, the strategy here was pretty smart. You come out in a really heavy formation, really credible run threat, and just overall great play call and great execution.